Nick Dillmann.
Okay, sweet. Hey, everybody. I'm Nick. I currently work as a trade operations analyst at a hedge fund named MIO. And yeah.
Good to see you, Nick.
You too.
Yeah, it's been a while. Next is Christian Dunphy.
My name is Christian. I graduated in spring of 2020, like Dr. Sirianni said. I am currently a contract administration specialist at New York State Industries for the Disabled.
Good to see you, Christian. Next is Tess Lyons.
Hi guys, I'm Tess. Currently I work in accounts payable as an AP processor for Albany Medical Center.
Good to see you, Tess. I think Tess and Christian, I think you took the full slate of classes with me at some point here at Oneonta. So good to see you. Good to see you back here. And last is Yohann Monpoeho.
I am Yohann. I graduated in 2020 from Oneonta, but after Oneonta, I went to grad school at University at Buffalo, and I graduated last semester with a master's degree in finance.
Excellent. Yeah, good to see all of you. So now I'll turn it over to Alexa, who will introduce the Economics Club e-board and get on with tonight's program. Alexa.
Hello, thank you so much. So my name is Alexa. I'm the president of the Economics Club. On the executive board is Logan Conti, who is the vice president, Justin Emmenzar, who's our secretary, Alex Borbis, who is our treasurer, and Noah, if I can find you to pin you on here, Noah is our public relations chair. Tonight's event is going to include two different sessions, two parts of the session. There's going to be 2 to 3 rounds of formal question and answer with the panelists. So I will ask Nick questions, Logan will ask Christian questions, Justin will ask Tess her questions, Alex will ask Yohann his questions, and we'll continue in that order as we go. The first question that we'll ask of the entire session is we'll ask each individual to describe their senior seminar project and who they worked with and kind of their takeaways from that. And then we'll jump into the questions that were listed. After we've gotten through those 2 to 3 rounds, we will open it up to question and answer from the general audience, interactions with the faculty and staff. So right before we have everyone introduce their seminar projects, I do want to extend another thank you to the professional staff for being here, for students for continuing to support the program, and to Dr. K in particular for conceiving this and making this happen. You know, this I think was a really beneficial program to run, and I don't think we could have done it without such an incredible advisor or the support of our faculty. So thank you for pulling your students, bringing them there, the Office of Alumni Engagement for helping us out, the panel obviously for agreeing to participate, and just students for having wonderful questions and wanting to make these connections and showing up. So I think that cuts it for opening remarks, but Nick, if you would like to start by describing your senior seminar project, then we'll go to Christian, Tess, Yohann, and go on to questions from there.
Yeah, sure thing. So my senior seminar project looked at the U.S. market volatility during the times of the U.S. and China trade war. My advisors were Dr. Sirigar and Dr. Chen. And I think it was a really valuable experience because it was like the first time I ever really looked at, like real world data and analyzed it in like made a way that like made sense. So I think like initially like it's a really good exposure to like working with Excel, like working with like a lot of data sources, and just like data analytics in of itself. So yeah, overall it was a good experience. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to touch on anything else.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's perfect. Sounds like a really interesting project. Very cool. Christian, if you would like to describe your project.
Yeah, sure. My advisors were Dr. K and Dr. McAvoy, and I decided to figure the win probability in the NBA using two main variables, which was like high elevation, because there's two high elevated teams as Utah and Denver. And then my other variable was like back-to-back away games, if fatigue played a role in win probability. So I used those two as my main variables. And then I used like regular stats like field goal percentages, 3 points, everything like that. And then I used one season's worth of data. It probably would have been a little bit better if I had more data from different seasons, but that's the time I had. And in conclusion, we figured that the high elevation variable did play a slight role in win probability in general.
That's exciting. That sounds like so much fun. Props for taking a sports paper because, ooh, that sounds tricky. It sounds tricky. That's awesome. Tess, awesome. Tess, would you like to describe your paper?
Yeah. I also did a sports related paper. The title was the relationship between local air quality and the officiating quality of the National Football League. So basically we look at in certain big cities, all of the air quality index levels, which basically, can you see me? Yes, okay. Which levels of how much pollution is in the air, and then we tried to test whether or not it affects the decision-making skills of the refs on the field, if their challenges get overturned or like their penalties get overturned. I did collect my own data, so I guess it was a little skewed, I guess. But my advisors were Dr. K and Dr. McAvoy. Dr. Sirianni would have been a great asset, but he was on sabbatical. But overall, I thought it was a really great experience. I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Collecting my own data was a lot of work, so it was extremely time consuming, but I thought it was like a valuable experience, like what Nick said with Excel and everything. And it, you just feel very accomplished when it's over because it was so much work, and then like you're proud of your paper at the end.
That's awesome. It sounds like it turned out great. Amazing product. I believe it was Christian and Tess. I know Tess was one of the two that presented at the state conference, was it?
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Very exciting. Last but certainly not least, Yohann, would you like to tell us about your paper?
Yes, I'll share about mine. So mine was about corporate social responsibility, which is pretty much the idea that corporations should be more self-regulated and should be more socially accountable to their shareholders, stakeholders, and all their customers, and any other parties that be interested in the corporation. So what I tried to do was to prove that corporations who practice corporate social responsibility were more profitable than corporations who didn't focus too much on it.
That's awesome. That sounds very interesting and obviously always very current, very present to talk about social responsibility. Awesome. Very cool. Thank you so much to our awesome panelists for running through that real quick. So now we'll start with formal question and answer. All right. And if at any point anybody in the audience has any questions for a panelist, please put the panelist's name in like a chat and then send that to either Noah Davis or just in the general chat, and we'll make sure that that gets addressed in the informal period or between rounds. But without any further ado, Nick, I'm wondering what job seeking advice you would give to your college self, having known what you currently do.
Cool. Yeah, great question. I think first and foremost, the number one piece of advice I would give to my college self would be to network and to start networking early. Obviously, networking is super beneficial, like in terms of like getting a job interview and like hopefully landing your first job. But I think like it's also extremely important in like figuring out, especially like if you don't know exactly what you want to do, I think it's like super helpful like in figuring that out, like getting to talk to all these professionals and like learning about their experiences, what their day-to-day is like, what they like about their day-to-day, what they don't like, and everything. I think it's a really like thoughtful way of like figuring out, okay, like this is like I think this is what I could be good at. This, I think, what I would like to do. And then once you get that piece, because like, I think for me, it was in like, I didn't start networking until like probably like my senior year, like pretty late. So like by the time it came close to like my graduation, like it didn't really have like a good idea of exactly what I wanted to do. So like I was kind of like had to like speed up the process a lot. So I think like starting networking early and like figuring out what you're able to do early on, like what you want to do early on, is super helpful. And then that way, like once you have that networking foundation, then you can, and you figure out like what you really want to do, then you can start asking like the more important questions, like, oh, like what does it take to succeed in these different roles? Like, and like, is there anything I can do in the meantime, like to improve my chances of like landing in this field and stuff like that? So I think networking is really important, and better start early, I guess.
That's awesome advice. Thank you so much.
Sorry. Next question for Christian. What was the greatest experience you had at Suny Oneonta that impacts you today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually had like two main ones. The first one was probably, there was a healthcare trip to Washington, D.C. that actually Dr. K was a part of. I took in his health econ class, and it was a week-long trip, and we were in and out of meetings, meeting with like high-end professionals, hearing their journeys, what they do now, learn how the whole healthcare system works. We learned like how to network. There was a whole networking event that we had. They gave us like business cards, and we would introduce ourselves. You know, it helped build relationships, and that was my junior year. So I think that taught us how to network and build relationships, which is good throughout your entire life, because that sticks with you. So that was just a great experience. And the second one would probably be just senior seminar in economics. I don't know how many of you have taken that, but I just explained my paper before, but it was just a great experience turning one simple idea and then bouncing back and forth with your advisor and growing that on the idea, and then eventually getting to your thesis. And that's just the beginning. And then you have to start collecting all your data, using Stata, running all regressions and everything. And then eventually using Excel, because Excel is probably one of the most used programs like that I use now. So that was a great experience using that, but also the project in general, meeting your deadlines and using your data and getting past your challenges if your data wasn't what you were expecting and everything like that.
Thank you.
Hello, Tess. So I'd have to ask you, what are the similarities and differences between academics and the workforce, and how have you been able to translate your college experience to the workforce?
Well, to start off, I think some of the similarities are pretty straightforward in what you expect. Like hand tasks to complete by a deadline, like homework and projects and stuff like in school. Want to show up on time, like not call out, like show that you're willing, like you want to be there, like co-workers and bosses is similar to like building relationships with your professors and classmates. I think that's really helpful just in like the office setting. And like the ability to work in teams and communicate with different people. Close your audio. Oh no.
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay. I think the biggest difference, not to state the obvious, but it's you get paid to do the work. But in the workforce, the tasks are much more focused in my experience, rather than it being like grouped together, like week by week, learning a different topic in a class. So basically, like you focus on the specific tasks every day. So like you start to get used to like the flow of things. And lastly, another big difference is there obviously are no tests in the workforce, but you are constantly being evaluated by your work performance. So you want to make sure that you do the best that you can all the time. Like, don't slack just because if you don't think that they notice, they're probably going to notice. So like, you want to look your best. But overall, translating my experience from college over to the workforce is basically the same. It's just more of a professional setting.
Thank you very much.
How's it going, Yohann?
Hello, how are you?
Pretty good. How about you? How did Suny Oneonta prepare you for graduate school?
So I feel like the courses that I took here at Suny Oneonta, specifically my junior year and senior year, it really laid down the foundation for the advanced topics that I was taking in my graduate studies. Like for some of the classes in my first or second semester, for the first like quarter or half of the semester, it'd be like review from stuff that I learned in Oneonta. Then we'd dive deeper into deeper topics and more difficult topics. But having that in Oneonta, then reviewing it again, would really strengthen my knowledge of the topics.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm back. I have another question for you, Nick. All right, my next question for you is kind of relating to your opinion. So what are some important characteristics that employers are looking for in entry-level candidates, and why do you think that those are such broad stroke and huge characteristics to maybe have as someone entering the job market?
Cool. Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are like two really key characteristics, at least like in my experience, that employers are really looking for. And I think one of the first ones is like being a self-starter and like being proactive in pretty much like everything you take on at work. I think it's like you're a really big value add if you're able to come in like right away and improve processes and improve how things are done without really being told to. I think it like just like is really beneficial for you in the long run. And another thing that I think is really, really important is like having a real eagerness to learn and like being genuinely curious about like pretty much everything going on, because you'll just get a really good understanding of like the business, what your boss thinks is important, what's like important to focus on. So I think eagerness to learn and being a self-starter is like one of the two of the most important things in my opinion, I think. And with those things, like with an eagerness to learn, like you also kind of like they're kind of almost go hand in hand too. Like having an eagerness to learn, like you'll like be more proactive because you're so eager to like learn all these new things. And with that, you'll be able to take on more responsibility and just be a better employee, pretty much.
That's awesome. And that sounds like the more well-rounded you are as a student, the more applicable you can create kind of your skill set to be in really any position. So that's awesome advice.
Right, I agree.
Thank you.
Next question for Christian. Is there anything you could have done differently to help you in the workforce after graduation?
Yeah, sure. I probably would have applied to more internships and internships sooner, because I think I started a little too late and I applied to some, but I didn't end up getting one, and they could be really competitive to get, especially the internships that pay. And after graduation, I realized that many jobs, like I was scrolling on Indeed and I was like reading job descriptions. I was like, that's really interesting. That seems like what I want to do. And I look more into it and it's like, oh, 3 to 5 years of experience in the field. I was like, okay, got to pass on that one. So I think an internship gives great experience. It doesn't just look great on your resume, but if you get an internship in the field that you potentially want to be as a career, it'll definitely help your skills and it'll definitely set a good path for your potential career. So it'll help you get your like foot in the door. And like I said, everybody has like their dream job, what they want to get to someday, but it's not always that easy. I realize that it's not just an education that you need, education and experience sometimes. So I think instead of getting a regular summer job that you would take, try to get an internship, push for that, because that definitely pays off on the long run for your career. And if you get an internship or not, when you first graduate, you can take, there's nothing wrong with taking like an entry level position that you're overqualified for if it gets you on the career path that you want to get to, because you're probably going to need experience regardless. So it's not bad to take that stepping stone job or two to get to the path that you actually want to get to in the long run.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
And back to Tess, we had seen that on your LinkedIn, there was like a bit of a gap between your last job and the current job. So I'd like to ask, what was the hardest part about being unemployed? And a bit similar to the last question, what advice can you give to someone trying to get into these entry-level positions?
Well, for me, it was a very stressful situation right after graduation. It was right in the midst of the pandemic, and there was a professional job shortage. Earlier before lockdown, I had a seasonal position at the DEC, just to hold me over before I could find another job. That's where I did my internship junior year. But that got canceled, so I was just kind of stuck. So for the first couple of months, like I applied and interviewed for jobs, but companies didn't really know what was going on at the time, so they weren't actively hiring. And eventually, like in August, I was like, okay, I need to find a job just anywhere. So I applied to Stewarts. And so I started as a cashier at Stewarts, and I tried, and like I showed that I was like a good employee. And eventually I started to get close to my district manager, and I asked him if there are other opportunities for me to move up in the company. And after a few months of that, I got promoted to an auditor for Stewarts, and I gained some more professional experience that way. And I think that played a pretty big role in the job that I have now, working in finance. So like, I think like, advice for someone looking for an entry-level job is that like you're not always gonna find a job that you want to apply for. You're not gonna get every job that you interview for, and it's not a bad idea to start low and try to work your way up and improve yourself and gain experience that way. Because if I don't know, if you do interviews, or at least for me, and then like you don't get the job after job, it could be very discouraging. So if you can start low and work your way up, I think that's a good way to gain valuable experience.
Thank you very much. Very relevant advice.
Thank you.
All right, Yohann, second question. What would you tell your past self as you entered graduate school?
One thing I would tell myself is to, as Nick said before, is to network more. That's definitely one of the most important things to do. And also, I would tell myself to go attend the career fairs, go meet some people, go see what the jobs are really about, and see what they can do for you, and see what you can add to the company and stuff like that. And also, what I would like to tell myself from my past self is to go out of your way to learn other skills, to pick up other skills that you don't learn in school, such as like maybe coding, or if you're not too great at Excel, maybe watch some YouTube videos, learn some more about Excel, anything like that, and just go out of your way and do some extra stuff. Maybe even some licenses that you might need in finance or whatever field you like to go into.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Thank you.
Okay, last round of questions. Actually, Yohann, you did a really wonderful job of tying into my question for Nick, talking about interdisciplinary skills and interests. My last question for you for this formal session is, when you first began your freshman year of college, did you originally intend to kind of get into this particular field of work, or what did you want to do if you didn't want to do this your entire life?
Yeah, so I think like most college freshmen, I pretty much had like absolutely no idea what I wanted to get into. I started my major in, well, I became an economics major because I took a economics course in my senior year of high school. And it was like one of those classes, one of the only classes that I thought like was truly really valuable, and I enjoyed learning about it every day, and I enjoyed going to class. And it did help that I really liked the professor, and I thought he was really smart, and I thought it was just like a good experience overall. So that pretty much led me to become an economics major, but really with no idea what I actually wanted to do. I liked studying the economy. I liked studying the markets. That was pretty much it. And then it probably wasn't until like my junior, senior year of college when I started to really, really wanting to get into finance. But yeah, so definitely when I was a freshman in college, I had no clue.
Definitely comforting for maybe some of the underclassmen in the call who are maybe not so sure.
That's why everyone should network and figure out what they want to do earlier.
And the last question for Christian. How do you manage employer expectations when first starting a job? And were they ever overwhelming or made unclear?
Yeah, so the first like real like office job I had, I worked at Trustco Bank in a credit department. And at the time I was just doing like general work, basically like intern work, just helping around the office because I was actually supposed to go off and train to be a teller and go to a branch. But I started off in that department because they needed help. So the work was not overwhelming. It was easy to handle, but I did it in a timely manner. And I think I exceeded my expectations. And then one day, a job opened up because I guess this lady got fired, but my manager, I guess, saw that I was doing a great job and liked my work ethic. So basically the next day she asked me if I wanted a full-time position there, and I took it. So I just stayed full-time in the credit department there. But when I was a credit coordinator, so I was like booking loans and like auto loans, mortgages and everything like that. It was pretty like repetitive and it wasn't overwhelming most times, except towards the end of the month when all of the loans had to be on the system. But it was definitely manageable, and I think I exceeded at that job. And until I left, and I'm at my current company now, it's NYSID, New York State Industries for the Disabled. And basically, when I started, they told me it was going to be 6 to 12 months of training. So I was like, okay, I don't have to be overwhelmed by anything. I'm okay. It's going to be a slow process. So then I first started learning a couple weeks. I was just picking up things, trying to like get like learning every little thing about it, you know. And then the lady that was actually training me, she slipped on ice and broke her shoulder a couple weeks after I started. And she was out like 3 out of the 4 months I've been there. So it was very hard to learn from there. And it was very unclear what my expectations were at the time. But I would like bounce ideas off other people in the office and just use whatever resources I had to learn from. And the only expectations that I could compare to were these 2 other guys that started with me. And I thought I was still keeping up to them with the pace. But and in the last couple of weeks, my trainer actually finally came back and everything's kind of thrown at me. It's a little overwhelming, but it's definitely, if you stay organized and manage your time well, it's easily manageable.
Thank you.
And the last question for Tess, to kind of piggyback off the last one, mainly some tips and strategies just for advocating for yourself as an entry-level staffer trying to move up.
Okay, so I'm trying this on my cell phone. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So the most important tip that I think that I can give is kind of what I said last time, like showing up on time, doing a good job, make it known that you're willing and able to be there. Just do the best job that you can do. And don't be afraid to ask questions, take on other challenges, a bigger workload. In my opinion, this will show that you're, I guess I said it before, willing and able to do a good job and potentially move forward in the company. And like having good work ethic just speaks for itself. Also take time to get to know your bosses and your coworkers. It helps to know everybody. It helps to know the dynamics of the office. Every office has its politics, so that's helpful to know. I wish I knew that when I first started. And just like try to get along with everybody, like change the way you act around people, even if you don't want to get to know them, I think it's better to try and create like a peaceful work environment so that like the dynamics work, and when you have to collaborate on a project, it goes smoothly.
Thank you very much.
All right, Johann, last question. Do you find having learned Python and R beneficial to your professional development?
Yes, I definitely find it very, very beneficial. Not really professionally because I don't really have a job yet, but I found that having it on my resume really helped me get a lot of interviews for sure. And during school, using Python and R, it really helped me pretty much automate a lot of my tasks. And it really is very good for data manipulation and data visualization. So I was able to present and a lot of data, like big batches of data in like moments, very like simply, quicker than Excel.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So now that we finished our formal session, we're going to go into the informal session. I'm going to start. I'm going to ask a question to the panelists. That first question is going to be asking about the professional role that you dislike the most, or that you enjoyed the least, is how we phrased it. We're going to start with Nick, and then we're going to go down the line to Christian, and then Tess, and then Johann. The idea is to learn what you don't like and kind of hear about, why didn't you enjoy that and things like that. If at any point anyone from the audience has any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat at any time or cut me off as respectfully as you can. We're going to do 2 to 3 rounds of this, and then we're going to make some closing statements. And I'm going to thank Dr. K again for being an amazing advisor. So now to formally ask the question, what professional role did you find that you enjoyed the least, and what aspects of it kind of made it the least enjoyable?
Yeah, I think for me, I don't think there's like a specific role that I've had that I didn't enjoy. But I will say, like, for my first job out of college, there was a bit of manual work to it, which kind of like was like mind numbing, and like obviously didn't enjoy, and just like plugging away at like numbers and stuff. So obviously manual piece of work, like I really don't enjoy doing. But that also created like a really good situation for me, because with manual work, obviously you can learn how to automate all these tasks. So it gave me like a good platform to be able to automate a lot of the manual tasks that I was doing. So yeah.
Very fair, very fair. Awesome. Christian, what is your response to this one? We're wondering.
Yeah, so I've only really had like 2 professional roles after college, but I would say my least enjoyable one would probably be the credit coordinator position at Trusco, just because a lot of the work was very repetitive, and it was just honestly kind of easy, and I thought I could do something more challenging. And honestly, it was kind of like a big company, so I felt undervalued as an employee by upper management and everyone. And then a lot of the company, that like the turnover rate was very bad. So there was constantly new people, and then like you're dealing with other new people on the phone, and then it's just poor communication. So that's why eventually like I left. It's not exactly what I wanted to do forever. So I guess that's why it was the least enjoyable.
Also very valid. Got to know what you don't like. All right. Tess, we're wondering what your least favorite professional role was as well. Let's see if your phone still works.
So overall, I've only really had 2, the auditor position and now in Albany Med. And so far, I liked both of them equally. But I have to say the downfall of the office job at Albany Med is just sitting all day. That's the one thing that I don't enjoy. And for auditing, it was a lot of moving around, physical aspect to it. But what I have to say I like the least about that is the work hours. I worked 6 days a week, on average, probably 55 hours a week, and it was a lot of driving. So I have to say that was probably the downfall for that one.
Very long days, totally valid. All right. Yohann, what was your least favorite professional role that you found yourself in?
I only had one professional role after Suny Oneonta, and that was at Aflac. And that was more so as an insurance agent, selling insurance contracts, whether it's life or life insurance or regular health insurance. And I didn't like dislike it, but one thing I didn't really enjoy about it is too much of a sales role, and I don't really see myself as a salesperson. But so that's why I didn't really enjoy it too much. But if you like sales, go for sales. But I see myself more working into quantitative and more so in finance than selling insurance.
Totally respectable. All right.
I
Sounds like
actually,
we have some fun.
I actually, last year I was going to take a job with Aflac doing the same exact thing, but I decided not to because I thought it was a pyramid scheme. So
Yeah, that's a good take.
yeah,
I mean, I worked there for 3 months, and they convinced me to go to grad school. Like I didn't like it, so I went to grad school.
wow.
Very fair, very valid. I think Logan is going to address the next question for everybody, and it actually came from Alex. But after Logan addresses that question, we're gonna do one more round. So that'll be our third round. And then we'll open it up one more time and make some statements, but I won't keep interrupting Logan.
Okay. So that question in the chat was, what was senior seminar like during COVID? So we'll start with Nick.
Senior seminar like during COVID, obviously online, which was somewhat challenging, mainly because it was like harder to reach your supervisors and stuff. I feel like that made it more challenging. Obviously, presenting to a screen full of people is still like pretty new to people, so I felt like it was like really weird. Like you would have like your PowerPoint slide up, like you wouldn't see anybody else. You're pretty much just like looking at your own PowerPoint slides and talking. So that could be like awkward. But other than that, it wasn't too bad, I guess, given the circumstances. Obviously, like everyone knows the challenges of moving online from in person. So it's pretty much the same situation.
I guess it's my turn. Well, we started senior sem that spring semester. We started in person, so like we got our projects going in person. We can meet with our advisors, and then obviously COVID happened, and then we switched to online, and no one knew what to do at first. Throughout the semester, we still had our weekly meetings with our advisors, but it obviously wasn't the same as in person. It wasn't that like personal connection where you could get things going like more fluidly. But yeah, it was definitely different, like zooming everything. And like Nick said, with our final project, we just kind of had to share our screen and kind of click through it, and everybody was just like kind of sitting there in silence. It was very different than actually presenting in a classroom. It was definitely an adjustment, I'll say that.
Thank you.
I'm laughing at Dr. Story's comment. I think it was difficult because we had to focus, but we had to meet with our advisors on Teams instead of in person. Also, we didn't have access necessarily to all of the like resources we had in the library and everything like that. And it just working on like your small little laptop trying to like do this project was kind of a hassle, but overall I think it was okay. And in agreement with Nick and Christian, the presentations were a little difficult, but overall I think it turned out okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with Tess. Losing those on-campus resources was kind of tough, and also hopping on Zoom for the first time and trying to present your PowerPoint slides was pretty new, and it was enjoyable, but it was kind of a challenge.
That sounds like such a learning curve. But I think that's a really fantastic set of skills that you've taken away from kind of making that conversion from in person to online, especially learning to do empirical work for your Dr. Story for the win. I say that all the time to myself because Story knows everything. Story and Bauer, but I crack jokes about that in seminar. Those are wonderful responses. Thanks so much, guys. Our last round of questions for you for the informal session, unless there are more that pop into the chat, I guess would be, I don't know, we have a list of questions that we can kind of pick from here. But I think an outstanding one, given that this is the Life After Graduation series, and there's all things that we've touched on as we've gone through these different rounds, but what were some of the experiences that you had during your undergraduate career that helped guide a lot of your decision making that led you to where you are today? Like, was there a standout moment during your undergrad career of like, oh, this professor, this person, this class really impacted how I made my decisions moving forward? So we'll start with Nick. I know it's a loaded question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think overall my entire experience at Oneonta was a very positive one. So I think it led me to the success I have today. I don't think there's like an individual defining moment of like something I can recall. But sorry, could you repeat the question? I kind of like got lost in it.
That's okay. I'm wondering if there was any person or class or series of individuals that kind of impacted how you made decisions that led you to where you are. And we also have a question in the chat, but we'll get to that one right after we finish this round.
Okay. Yeah, nothing in particular. I did think like senior seminar did play like a big role in like especially like learning Excel, like because obviously like in my day-to-day I analyze a lot of data today. So that like gave me like the foreground for like that laid like the grounds for me to learn how to analyze data, use Excel. And after that, I actually learned Excel VBA, which is Microsoft's programming language. So I think, and then that was really instrumental in me getting my first job out of college. So like, I think like taking real world data, analyzing it and like putting it into ways that people can understand like was super helpful. And then it's currently what I do a lot in my day-to-day today. So I think, yeah, senior seminar was a super helpful class for me.
That's awesome. That's very awesome. I'm so happy to hear that about senior sem. Looking forward to maybe pulling some of those same skills. Christian.
Yeah, all the classes and professors definitely helped in my decision making today, but the one thing that stands out is senior seminar because the whole big project and there's different, because you have a first, like a mid project and then like a final, and then you have different things like you have deadlines to meet and you have to manage your time, and that's what you have to do a lot in like the real world in work. Like you have to do things by a deadline, and then you have another project or something else due by that time, so you have to manage your time so it's not all crammed at the same time, and then you're overwhelmed because you don't have enough time anymore. And then so I think just the time management skills that I learned from that class and definitely helps me with my job today.
Absolutely. What an awesome skill to have. Awesome. All right, Tess, let's see if your phone works for this round as well.
I hope so. Well, I have to say that all of the professors definitely had a positive impact on me, and it will probably stick with me forever. Like, they were all fantastic. The Fed challenge and senior sem definitely were helpful to like enter the workforce, know all of the things about Excel, data, different types of programming. But I came into Suny Oneonta as a criminal justice major, and I took the principles of microeconomics just to try it out, and that's immediately when I changed my major. So I think that has a really big impact on where I am today as well.
Awesome. Those key point classes really do it for you. Absolutely. For you, it was micro. For me, it was macro. So love to see it. Yohann, let's hear your response.
And for me, I definitely had a positive experience with all the faculty and school itself. And I guess my main turning point that led me down the path to go to school after graduating from this school was the upper level finance classes with the concentration in finance. And the two classes that I liked the most was I think it was called corporate financial strategy and portfolio management. I like those two classes, and they really helped me with the finance program that I just completed, and they really increased my interest in finance.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love to hear that. It's very reaffirming as someone who has gone through a lot of the program, and I'm sure for the underclassmen who are just kind of getting into things to hear just how impactful our faculty, but also our courses are here. So it's very exciting. The question in the chat, let me read it off real quick. But I think I don't know if it's Talia or Talia. I think it's Talia. She has a question. She's asking about tips for beginning to network, and I think that's directed at Nick, but anyone is welcome to answer as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I think, so beginning to network, I think first and foremost, like obviously it seems like super scary at first. But once you start doing it, it actually isn't that bad. I feel like you should start, I feel like, with people like, is there anyone like in your family or your friend group or anything, like their family or their friends that like that has a job that might be interesting, that you like to learn more about? I guess like I would probably just like ask them to hop on like a 20-minute phone call really quick and just like pretty much just like ask them what they do and don't like, and then like from there you can just start seeing if they know anybody, like, and then with those discussions you'll be able to like create like thoughtful ways, like you'll have thoughtful conversations and you'll be able to realize like, okay, I want to gear my networking towards this type of field and whatnot. And then like I think LinkedIn is like a super good resource too, like even like reaching out to Oneonta alumni like on LinkedIn, like at a company that you might be interested or work in a field that you might want to go into. Like I think there's a lot of Oneonta alumni that are more than happy to hop on like a quick 20-minute phone call with you and like talk you through like what their experiences were like, and stuff like that. So I think like if you have like nowhere to start, like I think for sure like hop on LinkedIn, like look at Oneonta alumni, people who work in like fields you find interesting, and just reaching out to them. And then like I'm sure you'll get a lot of good experience and talks with those people. So
Awesome. That's absolutely awesome. I think that's great advice. And I think the way it was worded is such a beautiful way to kind of tie into all of the thank yous that we're going to give everyone for kind of taking that advice and applying it by coming here, even utilizing this as a first step. So we have about 5 minutes left in our program. Are there any other questions that we can pull from the audience? Anything else that we would like to hear from our amazing panel who has ended this program on such a high note? Give it a second to see if anybody has anything else they'd like to add. Faculty even.
Sorry. I'd like to add something to the networking. I 100% agree with what Nick was saying, but also at the same time, like keep relationships with your professors, and like say you do an internship, like keep contact with them throughout the years, like email them, how are you doing, like what's new, or like we went to Washington DC for healthcare economics, and alumni John Kaling was the host of that. So I think it's a good idea to also like remain in contact with people like that as well, just so you can have connections in places.
That is so very true. That's awesome. I would like to start some closing remarks. Just thank yous again to everybody else. Thank you to Nick and Tess and Yohann and Christian for your incredible feedback and your awesome advice. I hope that students reach out to you on LinkedIn. If I don't do it by the end of the week, I hope to see an invitation from you. But it's been so great getting to chat with you and getting to know all of you. I hope that this is a program that continues into beyond next semester, next year, but many years to come. Thank you to the e-board for working with me as we work out some technical things here as we're going through this program itself. You guys are awesome with the on the fly, like question response and making sure that all of those are put together in a really concise way. So thank you for helping me look into kind of like the LinkedIn's and the public profiles of each of our panelists so that we can learn a little bit about them coming into it. Thank you to the faculty for coming here and making a point to always be supporting these programs, student initiatives, and students kind of mentoring and connecting with other students. You always have our interest in mind, and it definitely shows. So we are truly appreciative for that, even if it's not always reflected. And thank you especially to Dr. K for creating this program, for really doing all the legwork on it and making sure it happens in cooperation with the Office of Alumni Engagement. This has been such an incredible experience. I'm so thankful to have been part of the Econ Club and a part of the organization, not only with this wonderful executive board and general body, but specifically under the advisement of Dr. K, who has just done incredible things. So I'm very just thankful for all of this. This really was very well done. So thank you to the audience also for being here tonight. Your questions are wonderful. We hope that you interact maybe privately with the panelists that were here or the faculty if you have targeted questions for any one of them that you're maybe not as comfortable putting in that chat. And thank you to Olivia and the Office of Alumni Engagement for making this event happen, not once, not twice, but 6 times throughout the course of the year with such wonderful attendance. So I'm going to pass it back to Dr. K so that way he can make a few remarks, and I guess we'll call it, and maybe he'll tell you about a few other events coming up.
Yes, thank you, Alexa. Again, thank you for all those kind words, particularly all the panelists that have participated in our first year in doing this. The Econ Club can be thankful enough for all their hard work. We have a few events coming up soon. So particularly we have I believe a video game night on April 21st. So we can go to our Instagram to find out more about it. As well, we have on the 22nd, we're sending donuts as well. So please come to the quad area or Fisal for that as well. And am I forgetting anything else that was part of the event? What yes.
The senior seminar showcase.
So yes, so the senior seminar showcase, and I'm sorry, but I'm losing. I did not put everything on paper, so I'm forgetting that. So Alexa, if you don't mind sharing more about that.
Sure. So I know I can speak for at least myself and Logan here, and maybe Alex as well. Okay, Alex as well, wanted to verify. But there are 8 individuals right now that are in senior seminar for economics. And on April 28th, around 5:30 p.m., we're going to meet in IRC in one of the big lecture halls. I'm also blanking on the specific room number, but you'll see it on Campus Connection in a few days. We are going to be presenting our projects that we're working on so diligently with our wonderful faculty advisors. So we would love if you would come to this. Alumni, please feel free to come. We would love to get your feedback as well. As someone who's gone through the whole process, that would be just so exciting if you're willing to either make the trip or we can see if we can make it hybrid, but I'm definitely just dropping that on Dr. K as this event is happening. But the senior seminar showcase is coming up, and our last Econ Club meeting of the semester is going to be on May 3rd, and then we'll be giving out graduation cords those days. So I think that closes off the events that we had. Oh, and the Sustainable Development event on April 19th, which is Tuesday. It's during the day. The Econ Club is sponsoring SDG 8. So we are talking about economic growth and development and ethical practice as it relates to labor. So yes, awesome. Thanks for the reminder, Dr. Siriani. For students as well, because shameless plug for Fed Challenge. Fed Challenge had an interest meeting today. I believe there's another one tomorrow. Please talk to Dr. Story or Logan or another faculty member about that to get you registered for maybe next semester. But Fed Challenge was an awesome experience. Thank you again. It's now 8:01. Our program is officially set for tonight. I'm going to hang back. I think maybe the panelists might, maybe some